Good evening. Happy Yom Hamishi, Thursday. How's everybody doing? It's still daytime here, so Chodesh Tov. Wishing you a joyful Rosh Chodesh. This is the first day of Nisan, the month that contains Pesach, Passover. It's a great month. It's a great time. It's a great day. Let's light up the darkness. Who's in the house as we set out to do a very interesting daf today? Yehud in South Carolina, Joseph in Massachusetts, Sharon in New Jersey, Melissa in Great Neck, Leona in Illinois, Lucy in Minnesota, Nancy in North Carolina, Stephen in New Hampshire, Peggy in Colorado, Paul in the Great Northwest, Pam in Oregon, Paula saying blessings to all, Bill in Mid-Missouri, Shandora in the Bronx, Renee in Indiana, Paula's in Chicago, Norman is in Ohio, Joe in the Inland Empire, Patrice in Utah. Over there on the YouTube side, Ella saying shalom, Marjorie in Georgia, Cheryl excited that she made it on time, Michelle in Washington State, Aoife says shalom, Cheryl is in Texas. Welcome everybody. It's really good to be with you. We are approaching quickly the end of chapter 8, that we won't get there today. Our daf today is Nun Tes, right? Nun Tes, page 59 here in Tractate Nazir, 17th volume of the Talmud. We're in chapter 8, and today we'll finish our discussion of Mishnah number 1 and go on to Mishnahs 2 and 3. Yesterday, toward the end of the day, we were discussing this case of uncertainty, where there were Mishnah number 1 is about two nazirim, two people who've taken a vow of naziris, to abstain from product of the grapevine, to abstain from removing hair from the head, to abstain from becoming impure from the dead, and at the end of the term of naziris, to bring the offerings of purity, as they are known. As opposed to if a Nazir during his term of Naziris or her term becomes impure for the dead, enters a cemetery by mistake, gives first aid to somebody who then dies, and so has contact with a corpse, then they have to bring the offerings of impurity, restart the count of days of Nazirs. What if there were two Nazirim and we're unsure whether one of them became impure for the dead, and if so, which one of them it happened to? Then they go through a procedure to sort of cover all bases in that situation. That discussion took a digression, and yesterday we talked a little bit about this idea that it's a Torah prohibition that men will not dress as women, nor will women dress as men. No cross-dressing. That's a biblical commandment. However, as we'll see today, there's a note here from Rav Steinsaltz, because what they were saying yesterday is, it was the custom of women in ancient times to remove armpit hair, to remove pubic hair, and so therefore that was a practice of women, and therefore men were prohibited from doing it. But interesting note here, so the Geonim, right, so these are commentators on the oral tradition later than when the Gemara was redacted. And the Geonim write at length that these issues, including wearing a woman's or a man's adornments, are dependent on time and place. If it is the custom of the Gentiles in a certain locale for men to wear a particular item of clothing or to groom themselves in a certain style, including, for example, to shave their armpits, then Jews are permitted to act likewise. And the same applies to the customs of women. So if in a location it's not considered the custom of women, to do a certain thing, for instance, I don't know what the ruling is on this. I'm certainly not issuing one. I'm not only not a poskening rabbi, I'm not a rabbi at all, right? So I follow the notes, and when you have a halachic question for yourself, that's a practical matter. You seek out a rabbi to ask. But for example, it used to be that nail polish was something that only women did, and so presumably that would have been prohibited for men to do. Seems like in recent years there's more and more men who do that. I don't know at what point that becomes a common enough practice that ruling might be adjusted, but that's the kind of issue that's being discussed here. It really has no bearing on the laws of nazirim. How do we get into that? Because we were talking about who can shave and who can't, and a Nazir who is also a metzora, right? So one who is afflicted with tsaras, a condition we no longer have since the temple was destroyed. But when it existed in ancient times, so, it was a physical expression of a spiritual malady that manifests as blotches on the skin. And then, an expert priest would come and look at that. And if the person became a confirmed metzora, someone who has the condition of tsaras, so he has to go through a purification. And that purification includes shaving not only the head, but the entire body. And that requirement that the metzora shave as part of his purification, if he also happens to be a Nazir, will override the prohibition of a Nazir to shave his head, for example. A Nazir cannot shave his head while he's a Nazir unless he becomes a metzora also, and so then he can do the purification of the metzora, including shaving his body, which includes shaving his head. And once we were discussing, this shaving, they also asked, well, what about if you have to shave the whole body? Does that include the armpits? That's normally at that time considered a custom of women. Does a man do it too? And that's how we got into this discussion. We picked this up at the very top of 59a. So some say a different version of this statement that we finished with yesterday, that Rabbi Chiya bar Abba said, that Rabbi Yochanan said, that a man who removes his armpit hair or his hair, down there in the pubic region, that was a custom of women, and if a man did that, he would be flogged. Now, flog means if he was warned that was a floggable offense and he did it anyway, in the presence of two witnesses, and then somebody brought this case to court, then he might be liable to lashes, but the point is that it is a transgression that bears a penalty. It won't ever get to the penalty phase in the normal course of things, but the point is that was something that men are not permitted to do, to do the customs of women. So here we have a different version of that same ruling, or of that same ruling of Rabbi Chiya in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabbi Chiya bar Abba said that Rabbi Yochanan said, a man who removes the hair of the armpit or the pubic hair is flogged due to the prohibition, Deuteronomy 22:5, a man shall not put on a woman's garment. And the Gemara objects to this. The removal of hair is not prohibited by Torah law, but by rabbinic law, right? The Torah law says man will not dress like a woman. To say that he can't do practices that women do, like shaving armpits, that's not written in the Torah. So that would be by rabbinic decree, where the rabbi said, shaving the armpits is like wearing a woman's garment, but it wouldn't be a Torah law, right? It would be a rabbinic decree. And, the flogging for doing this, transgressing a negative commandment, that's based on transgressing a Torah law. Why would flogging be appropriate in the case of somebody who had violated a rabbinic decree, right? So how then does Rabbi Yochanan say that he is flogged, which by definition is a punishment for individuals who have transgressed a Torah law, and they were warned, and there were witnesses, etc.? So the Gemara answers, well, it was he who said this law in accordance with the opinion of that Tana, rabbi of the Mishna, as it is taught in a Baraisa, the man who removes the hair of the armpit or the pubic hair violates the prohibition of a man shall not put on a woman's garment. So somebody held that that's actually a biblical transgression, not a rabbinic transgression. So the Gemara asks, and what does the first Tana, who holds that the prohibition is by rabbinic decree, what does he learn from the verse, a man shall not put on a woman's garment? And the Gemara answers, he requires it for that which is taught in a Baraisa, where it states, a woman shall not wear that which pertains to a man. Right? Man can't dress in women's clothing, woman can't dress in man's clothing. And a man shall not put on a woman's garment, for whoever does these things is an abomination to the Lord your God. Deuteronomy 22:5. Now, what is the meaning when the verse states this? If it teaches only that a man may not put on a woman's garment and a woman may not wear a man's garment, well, it is already stated in explanation of this prohibition that it is an abomination to the Lord your God. It's written, spelled out in the Torah. And there is no abomination here in the mere act of wearing a garment, right? Certain, prohibited sexual practices are called an abomination. Just wearing clothing of the other gender, that's not an abomination according to this opinion. So what does it mean? So rather, it means that a man may not wear a woman's garment, and thereby go and sit among the women, right? So what would be an abomination according to this opinion, these are not my opinions, these are Talmudic opinions, what would be an abomination according to this opinion is for a man to put on women's clothing and pretend to be a woman and pass for a woman among women. And likewise for a woman to wear a man's garment and sit among the men, like in other words, to pass as a man among men. So Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, from where is it derived that a woman may not go out with weapons to war? And the verse states, a woman shall not wear that which pertains to a man, and a man shall not put on a woman's garment, which indicates that a man may not adorn himself with the cosmetics and ornaments of a woman. And similarly, a woman may not go out with weapons of war, as those are fit for the use of males. And Rabbi Yochanan's ruling follows this opinion. Now, the discussion is going to go in another direction and leave this topic behind of men and women dressing like the other gender. Now, with this question about women and weapons, right? Like, what? Right? Did it just say that women can't be armed because weapons are sort of considered like the ornaments and the manner of dress of men, and therefore women cannot go out, strapped, right? Like wearing weapons. So I did just some quick research on that. And this is where, in ancient times, there was times and places where men sort of habitually walked around with weapons. It was more like fashion, right? It was not real so much because it was a time of danger, as certain weapons were just part of the clothing of men and not the clothing of women. However, in modern times, in our day, in times of danger, a woman is certainly permitted to carry a weapon if it is to protect, life and limb. So there is no prohibition on women wearing weapons of war. Moreover, we saw this note earlier. For example, you could say, does this mean that women have to wear skirts and women cannot wear pants? No, it does not mean that. Because in our society, it's very common for women to wear pants, to wear sweats, it's sort of the normal thing. The distinction between what is men's clothing and what is women's clothing, that in our time and society has become much more muddled than it was in other times and places. So you'd sort of be hard pressed to violate this law. But what they were pretty clear on is this idea that a man can't pass for a woman in order to be among women, and sort of in some kind of lascivious way, just be around women in a women's locker room by pretending to be a woman. That kind of thing is prohibited according to this. In terms of, LGBTQ, gender issues, etc., that's a whole other conversation, way beyond the scope of this particular discussion. I'm not going there. You need somebody who's a real expert in halacha to get involved in those discussions. We're just talking here about what it says on this particular Gemara, and we're not paskening from the Gemara, and with good reason, right? That general saying, we don't paskin from the Gemara, means we don't say what Jewish law is, what halacha is in our time, just from a discussion that we read in the Gemara. When you want to know what is halachically permitted and halachically prohibited, you look it up in Shulchan Aruch, right? Where it's sort of like the law has been codified. It's been codified for hundreds of years, The only things that are new rulings are questions that just didn't exist before because of technology or something like that. So if you have questions about a halacha, look up the halakhic answer. Here we're just covering what is the discussion on the page. We move on. Rav Nachman said, for a Nazir, right, one who has vowed to be a Nazir, it is permitted to shave armpit hair. Right? The Nazir is not permitted to remove hair from his head. So whether or not he's removing armpit hair is not going to be a violation of Nazirs. He might be violating the prohibition on doing the practices of women if in that time and place only women remove armpit hair and men don't. But let's continue this discussion. So the Gemara comments, and that law that a Nazir is permitted to shave his armpit hair is not in accordance with his opinion. The Gemara reports that the sages said to Rabbi Shimon bar Abba, we have observed that Rabbi Yochanan does not have armpit hairs. Right? Rabbi Yochanan, great halakhic authority, who has just said before, a man may not do that. A man may not remove his armpit hair because that's a practice of women. And here's Rabbi Yochanan himself with no armpit hair. We have observed that Rabbi Yochanan does not have armpit hairs, despite his own ruling that it is prohibited to shave them. He said to them, no, he doesn't shave his armpits. His hair fell out due to old age. Some people lose hair not only on their heads, but on their bodies as they get older. And the Gemara relates, there was a certain person who committed a transgression and was found liable to receive lashes before Rabbi Ami on some other matter. We don't know what it is what his transgression was, but he was found liable to receive lashes. When they removed his clothes to flog him, to administer the lashes, his armpit was exposed. And Rabbi Ami saw that he had not shaved his armpit hair. Rabbi Ami said to his attendants, leave him. This is one of those who are meticulous in observance of mitzvahs. We can see this is so, as he is so particular about prohibitions that ordinary people do not observe. So you see, there must have been a time and place where all the men were removing their armpit hair, so it was not considered a practice of women, and yet this guy was meticulous and didn't follow the herd, as it were, in removing his armpit hair. He was adhering to kind of a halakha that at that time was seemed old-fashioned, and that impressed Rabbi Ami. So Rav raised a dilemma before Rabbi Chia. What is the law with regard to shaving armpit hair? It seems like we have two views now. So he said to him, it is prohibited. Rav said to him, but it grows and it is uncomfortable. Rabbi Chia said to him, son of nobles, this hair has a limited time. Whenever a hair grows too long, it falls out, and therefore there is no concern that one's armpit hair will become too long. I think that's a strange answer. It seems to me that Rav raised this dilemma to Rabbi Chia, that his armpit hair makes him uncomfortable. Rabbi Chia saying to him, don't worry, the armpit hair will fall out and it won't be uncomfortable. Maybe maybe Rav is particularly delicate there. I mean, some people, like I'm one of them, like I would like to grow a beard. I can't grow a beard. I've tried many, many times. When my beard starts to get at all thick, like a real beard, the hairs just grow into the skin, and no matter what I do, what skin treatments, hair treatments, beard oil, this, that, the other, it doesn't work for me. I cannot have a full beard. And I'm not the only one. There are people like that, and so if it's going to make you uncomfortable to have a beard, then you don't have to have a beard. And likewise, maybe Rav, was genuinely uncomfortable with any armpit hair, and he has a different condition, and Rabbi Chia seemed to be answering him in a more general way. But at any rate, that's how it's recorded. Rav raised another dilemma before Rabbi Chia. What is the law with regard to rubbing armpit hair and thereby removing it manually? And Rabbi Chia said to him, prohibited. And Rav continued to ask, well, what is the law with regard to rubbing armpit hair indirectly with one's garment? Rabbi Chia said, permitted. Some say this was not Rav's question. Rather, he raised the following dilemma before Rabbi Chia. What is the law with regard to rubbing the armpit with one's garment during prayer? Rabbi Chia said to him, prohibited. And the Gemara comments, and the law is not in accordance with his opinion in this case. But actually it is. So during prayer, right, one may not touch an unclean, sweaty part of his body during prayers. This is the law. This is from Shulchan Aruch. nor may he rub his head. I didn't know that. You may not rub your head while you're praying. However, it is permitted to clean something off one's body, including the nose or ears, or to rub one's skin with a garment, so that you shouldn't be distracted by some dirt or stuff that fell on your clothing. And that concludes our discussion of Mishnah number 1. Now we're on 59b. Here's Mishnah number 2 of chapter 8. The previous Mishnah described how 2 nazirim sacrifice offerings of impurity and purity in a situation in which one of them has become impure, but they do not know which one. So this Mishnah, number 2, discusses what must be done if one of those 2 who are uncertain which of them became impure, if one of those 2 dies before bringing his offerings. So Rabbi Yehoshua said, the surviving Nazir asks someone in the marketplace who is not a Nazir to vow to become a Nazir corresponding to him, meaning under the same conditions as his own Naziris, so that he can bring offerings together with him. Now let's pause for a second. The sages have, as we've seen, discouraged strongly anyone from becoming a Nazir because there are so many problems with this unnecessary practice. No one has to be a Nazir. To hold yourself up to this higher standard, to consecrate yourself, as it were, opens yourself up to many potential problems, many possibilities for transgression, and it's just not necessary. You're gonna, carry yourself at a higher consecrated level, but there's all kinds of problems that could come up, as we have seen. Plus, you are making prohibited for you wine, something that is normally permitted, right? And so why would you take an oath to make something that God said is permitted and you are making it prohibited? Given that context, now that this guy, unfortunately, he and his friend were both Nazirim, one of them became impure, but they don't know which, and then one of them dies. So the other one can't go through that procedure that was spelled out in Mishnah number 1, where the 2 of them will both bring offerings and say, if I'm the one who's impure, then this is my offering of impurity. If I am the one who is pure, then this is my offering of purity. And then 30 days later, they sort of bring another set of offerings and say, well, if I was the pure one before, then this is just a gift offering. If I was the impure one before, then that was my offering of impurity. And now I'm giving my offerings, my conclusion offerings, right? So, but if one of them dies, so you can't do this kind of partnership procedure to make sure all the offerings are covered. So this Mishnah, Rabbi Yehoshua is suggesting that you should get somebody to take an oath of Naziris just so that he can partner with you in bringing offerings and of uncertainty. I mean, who's going to do that? And that's exactly the question that the Mishnah is going to ask. Right? But so what would the procedure be? So he finds someone in the marketplace who's willing to become a Nazir just to help him bring these offerings, right? And they're going to be a Nazir for, it sounds like 60 days. So it's a serious term of Naziris. And he says to him as follows, this new Nazir, if I was impure, so you are hereby a Nazir immediately. And if I was the pure one, so then you are hereby a Nazir in 30 days. And then you'll start your Naziris in 30 days, your official Naziris in 30 days. And then they both proceed to count 30 days without wine, because the guy might be a Nazir now, right? They both proceed to count 30 days, and then they bring an offering of impurity and an offering of purity. And the Nazir, who was defined as having uncertain impurity, the one who survived with the partner that died, so if I am the impure one, the offering of impurity is mine, and the offering of purity is yours, this replacement Nazir. And if I was the pure one to begin with, so the offering of purity is mine, and the offering of impurity that we brought shall be of uncertain status. And then they subsequently count another 30 days and bring an offering of purity. And the first Nazir says, well, if I was impure before, the offering of impurity that we sacrificed at the end of the first 30 days, that was for me. And the offering of purity that we brought then, that was yours. And this offering that I am bringing now is my offering of purity. And if I was the pure one, then the deceased Nazir was impure, and the offering of purity that we brought 30 days ago was mine, and the offering of impurity that we brought earlier was of uncertain status, And this that we're bringing now is your offering of purity. Now, Ben Zoma said to Rabbi Yehoshua, and who will listen to him to vow to be a Nazir corresponding to him just to help him out with his offerings of uncertainty? How can one design a halacha, a law, on the assumption that a non-Nazir will agree to be a Nazir for a lengthy term, right, for 60 days? So rather, a different procedure is available. After 30 days of Naziris, this surviving Nazir, he brings a bird sin offering and an animal burnt offering. And he says, if I was the impure one, the sin offering is for my obligation as an impure Nazir, and the burnt offering is a regular gift offering. And if I was the pure one and my friend died, right, he was the impure one, so then this burnt offering is for my obligation as a pure Nazir, my conclusion offering, right, because I finished Naziris, and the sin offering is of uncertain status. And then he counts another 30 days, just to be sure, because he might have been impure, so he observes another 30 days of Naziris. And then he brings an offering of purity, right? An offering like the conclusion offering of a Nazir. And he says, if I was impure, so the first burnt offering, that should be considered a gift offering. And this one that I'm bringing now is for my obligation. And if I was pure, the first burnt offering was for my obligation as a pure Nazir. And this one that I'm bringing now is a gift offering, right? You can always make a gift offering, a burnt offering, an elevation offering, an olah. That was an offering you could always bring. It was part of the offerings of a Nazir, but also a person could just go to the temple and make a free will offering, a gift offering, and it's the same type of offering. So that's why he's saying either counts for my obligation or I'm just giving it to God as a gift offering. And if I was pure, the first burnt offering was for my obligation, and this one is now that I bring now at the end of 60 days is a gift offering. And these, meaning the sin offering and the peace offering that he's sacrificing now at the end, comprises the rest of my offerings that I'm either obligated to bring now because I was impure the first term, or that I was obligated to bring in the first set of offerings because I was completing my Naziris then. So Rabbi Yehoshua said, according to your opinion, it turns out that this Nazir brings his offerings in halves, meaning in stages. Right, because in order to do it by himself, he would have to have, done one offering at the end of 30 days, and then the peace offering and the sin offering at the end of 60 days, which would normally have been brought together, but he's going to split it up because of this case of uncertainty. So Rabbi Yehoshua is pointing out that you would have split the bringing of the offerings by 30 days that are normally brought together. However, the rabbis agreed with Ben Zoma that this is the correct procedure. And okay, so we split up the offerings, but it's his only out because he's not really going to go find somebody to become a Nazir just to share offerings of uncertainty with him. That's Mishnah number 2. Very short Gemara. The Mishnah taught that Rabbi Yehoshua countered Ben Zoma's opinion by pointing out that his solution would cause the Nazir to bring his offerings in stages. And the Gemara asks, well, what's wrong with that? And let him bring the offerings in stages. And Rabbi Yehuda said that Shmuel said Rabbi Yehoshua said this comment only to sharpen the minds of the students. He did not really maintain that it is prohibited to act in this manner. Rather, he wanted to test his disciples to see if they were aware of the law. Rav Nachman said, in a light-hearted vein, right? So he's joking. What will Rabbi Yehoshua do with the intestines of animals so that they will not spoil? Meaning, if he insists that the offerings of purity must all be brought at the same time, so the only way to do so is to wait 30 days after slaughtering the burnt offering before burning its intestines, which is certainly impractical. Meaning, of course you're going to bring it in stages, you don't have a choice. That concludes the Gemara and discussion of Mishnah number 2. Here's Mishnah number 3. And we are going to read the Mishnah, and then we're going to stop for the day, and we'll start on the Gemara of Mishnah number 3 tomorrow. So here's Mishnah number 3, and then I'll go to comments and questions. In the case of a Nazir who, on the first day of his Naziris, was impure from a corpse as a matter of uncertainty, Maybe he was standing in a cemetery, and maybe he's not. He's not sure at the time that he made his vow of Naziris. And he was also, this is an odd phrase, he was also a confirmed metzora as a matter of uncertainty. Meaning, confirmed metzora means that until the priest looks at the skin blotch and says, yes, that's tsaras, then he's not a confirmed metzora. So we're talking about a confirmed metzora, somebody that has tsaras, but we're not sure if when the priest confirmed, yes, that's tsaras, he was talking to this guy or to someone else. So this is somebody who at the beginning of his Naziris is unsure whether he's impure for the dead, and he's unsure whether he's a metzora or not. It's that double case of uncertainty with pertaining to impurity of the dead and tsaras, right? He definitely vowed Naziris. He is a Nazir, but is he already impure for the dead at the time that he took his vow? And is he a metzora? These are matters of uncertainty. So about this person, it was uncertain whether or not he is a metzora. So how can he fulfill the shaving obligations of a pure Nazir and an impure metzora? The problem facing this man, this Nazir, is that a metzora must shave both when he begins his purification process and at the end of the purification 1 week later. However, a Nazir is prohibited from shaving his head. Additionally, a metzora may not partake of sacrificial food because he's impure. A Nazir may partake of sacrificial food. Therefore, he may partake of sacrificial food only 60 days after he may have become impure, when the uncertainty with regard to his tsaras will have been clarified. He shaves for the first time for his tsaras after 30 days, and for the second time 30 days later. The shaving of the end of the purification process, at which point he brings the offerings of a purified metzora, and he may partake of sacrificial food, right? Whereas a metzora normally waits 7 days between his first and second shaving of his whole body, this guy, because he's also a Nazir, has to wait 30 days. Additionally, he's uncertain if he is tameh from a corpse as a Nazir, so he's dealing with that. So this person, he may drink wine and become impure for the dead, meaning effectively ending his Naziris, only after 120 days. Right? So he became a Nazir for an unspecified term. That means he vowed to be a Nazir for 30 days. Because at the beginning of his 30-day term of Naziris, he's unsure if he's tameh for the dead, and he's unsure if he's a metzora, that 30-day term is going to end up being 4 times longer. It's going to take 120 days to resolve all of the uncertainties and bring the offerings, etc., to go through the purification. And this is because he might have been a full-fledged metzora, which means that his shavings count toward his metzora, not his Naziris. Consequently, after the first 60 days, he must observe another 30 days of Naziris in order to grow his hair again, so that he can make a shaving of 30 days, growth of hair on the head, for the final shaving of a Nazir. It's required that you've been not shaved for 30 days in order to conclude Naziris and do the shaving of the conclusion of Naziris. And even then, he has yet to fulfill all his obligations, as he was uncertain whether or not he was tameh from a corpse, ritually impure from a corpse, which means that his shaving after 90 days was for his impurity. He must therefore remain a Nazir for yet another 30 days so that he can do a final shaving where he knows for sure he's doing a shaving of purity, and then he can fulfill all his Nazir's obligations. Now the Mishna notes the reason that he cannot shave for his tsaras after 7 days and perform the second shaving of a metzora 7 days later is because the shaving of tsaras overrides the prohibition on shaving of a Nazir only when his status as a metzora is definite. However, when his status as a metzora is uncertain, the shaving does not override his Naziris, and therefore he must wait 30 days before each of his shavings for tsaras. And that's why this case of double uncertainty ends up creating a Naziris term 4 times longer than he expected. this is one of those kind of extreme hypothetical cases, but it could happen, and lends strong support to the discouragement that the sages issued for anyone becoming a Nazir. Okay, let's go to questions and comments. On Nazir 59. Come on, reload. What's going on? Double check that. Here we go. Nazir 59. Tom. Nina says, you covered this, but I couldn't remember the answer. Does a metzora Nazir have to restart his Naziris? You don't have to restart your Naziris because you became a metzora. Rather, the days that you are impure from tsaras don't count toward your total of days of Naziris while you're impure, but you don't lose the days you already counted the way you do when you become tameh for the dead when you're a Nazir. Bill, with regard to wearing weapons. So, a bit like how dirks were the standard accoutrement of men in the Scottish Highlands, is what the ruling is thinking about. Weapons not as weapons, but as an ornament. I would say, yeah, that seems to be what it's saying. I mean, even if there was a time and place where, the men were armed as a matter of being soldiers, but in that society, there was no such thing as female soldiers. So then the women were prohibited from wearing weapons. We live in a time where there certainly are women soldiers, and there certainly is danger. And for both those reasons, I'm pretty sure, I know, women can wear weapons and not be afraid of violating this particular law. However, when I did that research, I think it was Rabbi Yosef Avadia also said that, okay, a woman can serve in the army, a woman can be a security guard, a woman can carry weapons and wear the uniform that goes along with it. However, she's not exempt from the requirements of modesty. By the way, men have modesty requirements as well. Right? So, she can carry the weapon, but, in the way Orthodox women are not showing a whole lot of skin, she would still have those requirements. David, with regard to men shaving body hair, what about swimmers who have been shaving their bodies in order to reduce traction? Now we're talking about men. Now, there was an interesting discussion here where when men were shaving their body because of health reasons or because of discomfort or some other purpose than beautification, so then it was a different case. So your question is very good, and it seems to me like that's not going to be a problem. Like if an Orthodox Jewish man wants to be a competitive swimmer, he's not shaving in order to beautify himself, kind of in the way that women shave their legs. He's doing it for speed. I was not a religious Jew when I was younger, but I was a bicycle racer, and I shaved my legs a couple of times. And by the way, for bicycle racers, it's not really a matter of wind resistance. You might have thought that's why they shave their legs. It's actually more relevant to the fact that if you take a fall at high speed on a bike, you're gonna get that road rash, right? Your skin is gonna be dragged along the asphalt or the concrete and create terrible abrasions. If your legs are also hairy, it's going to make it that much harder to clean and to heal that kind of a wound. And that's actually the primary reason why bicycle racers shave their legs. I was like a teenager when I did that the first time, and it was awful. Right? Like, first I was an idiot, so I didn't know how to shave my legs. I just knew I had a race coming up, and it was, needed to be done. If I'd known anything at that time, I would have got like some kind of electric trimmer and shaved off the bulk of the hair, and then maybe shaved down the last bit. But I just took like a 59-cent face razor, double bladed, and shaving cream, and took that to my legs. And oh my God, it took 2 hours, and I cut myself so many times. A terrible experience. Plenty of motivation not to do that again. Cheryl. with regard to the cross-dressing prohibition dependent on local custom. So if in Scotland a man could wear a kilt, right, like I think that would be a good example. I mean, I would think that in Scotland, where kilts are common for men, I don't know how common they are now, but certainly there have been times in history where they were, and Jews lived there, and that was just like considered normal fashion for men. So that would not be a man taking on the clothing of a woman and trying to pass as a woman. Just men dress that way. So exactly, good point. Jonathan, with regard to taking the oath of Naziris, there is the Kabbalistic view that each Jew must adhere to all 613 commandments. Since you can't do it in one lifetime, there is reincarnation. So Jonathan is alluding to the fact that, for example, many of the commandments, it's understood that there are 613 commandments in the Torah that Jews have to live by, right? As opposed to all people, non-Jews included, have the 7 Noahide commandments. But Jews are obligated in 613 commandments. Now, no Jew can follow in one lifetime all 613 commandments. Why? Because some commandments only apply to women and some only apply to men. Some commandments only apply to priests and some only to the high priest, right? So unless you're both a high priest and a woman, which is impossible, you can't fulfill all of the commandments in one lifetime. So Jonathan is saying that there's a tradition that says since every Jew should or must fulfill all 613 commandments, we live multiple lifetimes. So I guess maybe everybody gets to be the high priest in some dimension, in some world, so that he can fulfill the commandments that only the high priest can do. But that's a spiritual teaching. Somewhat esoteric. But Jonathan continues, since you can't do it all in one lifetime, there is reincarnation. So it seems that there is some impetus to become a Nazir just so they can complete the commandments in the Torah. Very interesting, very interesting. So under this view, if you want to have the opportunity to fulfill every commandment, then you should be a Nazir at least once, right? According to this view. There's other commandments that are very difficult to fulfill, like, shooing away the mother bird before taking the young. Like, first of all, who wants to do that? Like, who wants to take the birds from a nest, the little chicks, if for some reason you're going to take the chicks from a nest, you have to shoo away the mother first so that she doesn't have to suffer and watch her chicks being taken away. That particular law, I believe there's a nuance to it that you can't go looking for a nest in order to fulfill that commandment. You have to chance upon it. It has to happen to you or you can't do it, which would lend some support to the opposite view of what Jonathan's bringing up, that maybe we can't fulfill every commandment because it's not given to us to fulfill every commandment. But he continues, so otherwise, continued Gilgul HaNefesh, meaning reincarnations, until the 613 are complete. In any case, it seems that there may be a sentiment to enact positive commandments and avoid negative ones, regardless of guidance, to get into the situation in the first place. Very interesting. I'd like to learn more about that idea and who actually espouses the idea that one way or another we'll get to fulfill every commandment. And to what extent is that just something that sort of God arranges for us, or are we meant to seek out opportunities to fulfill? So for example, there's a commandment of how you make restitution after you've stolen something. So does that mean that we need to steal something in order to fulfill the commandments of restitution? I'm sure not, right? But maybe you've learned that you took something by mistake, you didn't intentionally steal, and then you can fulfill the obligation of restitution. These are questions for another day. And finally, Michelle says, I'm just unclear how he was uncertain if he was a confirmed metzora. So the idea there would be that we have to be talking about a metzora, not a possible metzora, for this to matter. So how can you be an uncertain, confirmed metzora? And the suggestion I made, I don't even know if that's exactly how you would get there, but it might be that, two people had skin blotches, and a priest came and looked at them, examined them carefully, and then, he got called away. And as he was leaving, he said, oh yeah, you are confirmed metzora. And he said it in the singular, right? In Hebrew, the word you has both singular and plural forms. So it would be unclear as the priest was rushing out the door which of the two he was talking about. So that would be a case where one of them is a confirmed metzora, but you're not sure which. So that's how you could be uncertain whether you're a confirmed metzora or not. That's just an example that I thought of. That's what I've got for us today. With God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow at the regular Friday time, noon Pacific. Have a great night and a good Chodesh, and may this month of Nisan come upon us for blessing. All the best.